Everybody knows Honda's K-Series engines respond really well to a camshaft upgrade. We're going to show you in a step-by-step fashion how to do that swap.
So the first step to removing camshafts is to remove the valve cover. Taking all the bolts off the harness and all that jazz. So next step here is to remove the timing chain tensioner cover, and then we can get at the actual tensioner, but we're gonna have to set the car to top dead center before we do anything else. And now comes the most important part, Rui lining it up to top dead center. So what are we looking for here, Rui?
There's two marks on the cam gears.
Yeah.
And then there's the top dead center mark on the crank pulley.
Now you probably can't see this very well, but Dave, point to the lower mark on the crankshaft, or crank pulley there, and there's a timing mark on the actual cover. So those two need to line up there, as well as the cams up top. Next up here, we've got to remove the tensioner, right, Rui?
Yep. And normally we put a little thumbtack, which it comes on a stock tensioner already, so I keep a bunch of them all the time. And before you remove the tensioner fully, should put that in, or else when you go to pull it out, it will unlock and put too much tension, and then it's a pain in the butt to take it out.
Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah.
So what if that, you said if that's not lined up, you just move the crank pulley
back a little bit?
Just a little bit,
and it'll go
to depress it.
Just goes in there, okay.
And the pin goes in, exactly.
Yeah, and we're talking about that thing right there.
Right here.
Yeah, so essentially you're just putting pressure
just put
on
a
the
little bit of
tensioner.
pressure, yeah, exactly. Makes it easier to take it out instead of having a little bit of pressure in that, using a tool the whole time. There you go.
So we heard the tension come off the cams a little bit.
Yeah.
That's up.
There it is.
So next step, we're going to remove the cam caps. There's a sequence to this, obviously. Normally,
Of course.
middle, the outside,
Yeah.
one by one. Just crack them loose. A lot of us use this bungee to keep the chain from having too much slack on the bottom, which will make it
Oh yeah.
skip timing on the bottom chain. There's a couple of companies that actually sell a guide that holds up the chain so it doesn't have that much slack.
Right.
But since we don't have this on this motor right here, this is the best way to do it.
All right. And where do
Grab
you
the
attach
bungee
that to?
And then any hole on the hood kind of thing. There you go. Just like
Oh,
so.
gotcha. Right on.
And like that, we can take off the cams and the chain gets held 100% all the times. Once in a while, you see some of them get stuck. Here's an easy way to do it. Put it on the thread on the corner, wiggle it, and there you go.
Wow.
And it's
Yeah,
off.
that's nice.
We'll move on to the next. Same thing.
Man, the internet is learning a lot here today.
Yep. Same thing with this one. There you go. And they're all unlocked. They're all numbered, so obviously
You can't screw them up.
can't
but
really screw them up,
You should
but
still put them in order.
Put them in order, exactly.
Yeah.
So next step, it's one by one to make it
yeah,
easier,
Okay.
right?
So you don't
So-
actually leave the cam gear.
No, there's some people do whatever. I tend not to do that way.
Okay.
I rather do it the old school way, pull everything out and do everything
Yeah.
manually on the floor.
Right, I got you.
Which see right now we got enough tension that shouldn't really skip from the bottom.
Oh yeah, right on.
So next step is to remove the cam gears and the cam triggers.
Look at the
I've
setup here.
always been taught not to use an impact
Yeah.
on this stuff. So I do it manually on the floor like this to all of them, especially on the intake side because it's a VTC gear.
Yeah.
And you really don't want to put force into it so you don't mangle the veins on the inside
Yeah.
of the gear.
Well, I like the technique,
So
and
let's
I'm sure
crack
this is
it
gonna
loose.
work well.
There you go. That
Wow,
one's done.
that's it. Oh dang! I didn't know there was a back end on this.
Yep. And then just an 8
Honda's
mil.
making us work.
Yeah, on these things, yeah. Because even though it's an 8 mil, it's pretty freaking tight. And there she goes. That's the cam trigger for the exhaust side, which is marked, as you can see, with an E. So you can't really get it wrong.
Oh yeah.
Putting
Okay,
it back.
that's good.
Exhaust one is in.
Yep.
Put the bolt back in. Hand tighten all of them, and then we'll set them all to torque spec. Sometimes these are a little tricky. You got a guide hole into the pin. Simple enough, but once in a while You gotta make sure the cam gear slides in 100%, like so.
Oh, wow.
This one's like,
Damn.
yeah.
That was some jam there, DV.
Yeah. You know when you need to bring in the dead weight, then you got a tight bolt.
The torque spec for the intake side, which is the VTC gear, is 80 foot-pounds. And then on our exhaust cam, which is a smaller bolt, which is only 50 pounds. The cam triggers in the back are both 8mm Allen key, which are 35 foot-pounds. There you go. That's it.
Good.
Next step is putting them back in. We try normally to line up both marks as close as possible so you don't have to play around with them too much.
Because arguably this is more difficult than removing it, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
Especially having to play with this chain right
Exactly, because you got to make sure you don't want to make the chain skip on the bottom also. So
Yep,
and then
yep,
there's more work for us that we really don't want to have. Obviously, we can now remove this because it's going to cause a little bit of a pain, and we try to hold it with our hand, pull it up so it doesn't skip on the bottom.
So you're holding it right now,
this
yeah?
one, yeah.
Okay.
Just lift it over and guide it in. Just like so.
You're just picking the chain up a bit.
Yeah.
Moving it. You can see it's a little cumbersome, but
Yeah.
eventually you'll get there, right?
Yeah, exactly. The whole thing is try to hold them as much as you can so it doesn't skip on the bottom.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So
I can
when it
imagine.
skips on the bottom, and then it's just more work for us that we don't want to do, obviously.
Yeah.
So that's pretty close,
Okay.
which we can manage now.
Yeah, so I see
Yeah.
you've kind of offset them, but when you
Yeah.
pull them together, they should come up.
Exactly,
All right.
There's 2 holes on the back of the cam trigger, which if you look on
Yeah.
the cam cap, which
Yeah, you
there's
can
a
see it,
special
yeah,
Honda
right
tool
there, yeah.
to lock it in place. So you try to get it as close as possible to there. So when the cam caps are tight, you just put the pin in, which it's this
You've got
tool
the
right here.
special tool, yeah.
Yeah. Some people use a drill bit, but since we're fortunate enough to have the tool, we'll just use the tool.
Cool.
Next step is putting the cam caps back on. They're all numbered on the top of the cap and the lower part of the cap. So can't really mess it up, but
I'm sure
not
people
to say
still
that
do.
people still do or put them backwards. Normally there's an arrow always pointing to the cam gear. Normally kind of like start on the back here just to bring the cam down a little bit so it doesn't put a lot of force on the rest of the cam caps. So we'll kind of go slowly back and forth and until they somewhat settle down. The final torque sequence will obviously be center to outer. We have inch pounds over here, which normally foot pounds will be 16 foot-pounds to torque down these cam caps, and we'll go from
What's it in inch pounds?
inch pounds will be like about 190.
190, okay.
So we'll go little by little from center to outer.
So you just move it a little bit back.
Just gotta move it a little bit.
You can use a drill bit.
Yeah, you can use a drill bit, similar size. Gotta bring it forward, and there you go. So cams are locked now. We gotta check the timing on the crank again.
That looks good there. I wish we could show you this, but it is pretty difficult to see. Rui's looking just down the hole
Yeah.
here.
You can almost see it.
At the crank.
It's very
well,
close.
we can. Me and you can. but-
yeah.
So you're just moving the crank a little bit?
Yeah, just positioning it 100% so we can put all the slack in the back. So when we do put the tensioner in, everything's 100%, obviously. Next step is to put the tensioner back in. Put both 10 mils in, pull the thumbtack out, and put nice tension
Ooh.
on the chain. And then after that, obviously, we're gonna clean the silicone off this timing chain cover and
Reseal it.
reseal it,
Yeah.
put the old one back on, and we're good to go. Gotta move the cam slightly back or front to pull out the pins. obviously, because they're under a little bit of tension. And there you go. Done.
Beauty.
Next step is we'll rotate the motor a couple of times to make sure it is on timing 100%. And then we can obviously put the valve cover back in and close it all up. And there you go. You kind of heard that, which is the tensioner pretty much putting 100% tension on the guide so it doesn't let the chain skip. And then we'll rotate it a bunch of times.
So you go back to top dead center?
And back to top dead center,
you also
exactly.
confirm it.
It should be good right there. We'll look at the bottom.
Good?
Yep, we're good.
Excellent. With the cams in, now comes the fun part that I didn't think we were going to have to do, but we do. And that is valve lash adjustment, right?
Dry Cartel obviously recommends 8 on the intake, 9 on the exhaust. So we'll obviously rotate the motor to put the cam lobe on the upright position. So there's, you can see there's a little bit of no tension at all on the spring, and that's how we adjust them. We'll normally put the feeler gauge in. As you can see, it's a little too tight for the specs for Dry Cartel. So what we'll do is use our fancy blue point tool to get it loose. And then as you can see there, there's a flathead screwdriver in the middle of the tool. We'll slightly loosen it, put in our feeler gauge. I normally like to have, they tend to have a little bit of drag. I go a little tighter than usual, just as a preference, and right about there is perfect. You can somewhat hear the drag on the feeler gauge. Then obviously you gotta hold the flathead screwdriver and tighten the 10 mil, and hopefully the screwdriver itself doesn't move so it doesn't put more tension than it should have. And the first one is good. We'll spin the motor over, get the next lobe on the upright position again.
So now you're gonna just do this another too many times, and we're gonna cut to you being done.
Exactly. So last but not least, obviously, is tighten it back up, put the valve cover back on.
That's a wrap on our K-Series camshaft swap here at K-Tuned. Big thanks to Rui for all the hard work. We hope that helps you with your own cam swap. Be sure to go to our Shopify page, our e-store, check out all our swag. And you know what? You can even buy some camshafts on our store site too, so go check us out. speedacademy.shop. So this is a fairly common failure point on these motors.
Yeah,
what is it
especially
about the
high mileage.
So just a mileage thing that the spring wears out?
Spring wears out, and there's the teeth that actually lock the tensioner in place. They start wearing out, and within time, and they'll just round off, and
It skips the tooth.
it just skips a tooth.
Right.